Now, this theory is predicated on the idea that Usyk is strong enough to resist Fury's mugging attempts, that he has enough pop to stop him just marching forward, to give him a certain amount of freedom, to allow him to work his magic, keep slipping inside the jab, outside, constantly moving, holding the bigger man to a higher pace. Now, there is already a significant percentage who believe that that's the kind of pattern that will be set early and ultimately lead the Ukrainian to victory. There are, though, some other, I guess you could say, more credible voices, fighters, who have echoed some of the things I've just said and believe that at the bare minimum, that is what's going to make this fight very tough to call. Now, yeah, we know that Steve Cunningham is still a little bit salty over losing to Tyson Fury, now way back in 2013. The way he was pinned against the ropes with that forearm and then lamped with the right hand. He knows Fury fights dirty, but he also kind of begrudgingly acknowledges that that very much helped him and that it's kind of a smart thing to do. Man, name me one all-time great fighter, and I'm going to show you he definitely incorporated some dirty tactics to get the edge, to work a little dirty advantage, just for the right amount of time that the referee didn't penalise there, or they just work the blind side, as they say. It always happens. Boxing isn't just moving and punching, a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of elbows. The smart guys know what they're doing. Nonetheless, Cunningham has picked Usyk to win this fight when and if it gets made. He just thinks the angles that Usyk makes, the busyness, the fact he's a southpaw, the fact he said, quite obviously, that Usyk is better than him as a fighter, is going to make the difference when it comes to the result. Now, the second point could be sour grapes, you decide, is he thinks now Usyk's team has got too much weight behind it, where they will not allow for certain dirty tactics for Fury to try and employ in the ring. Maybe they'll get a strict ref, but they don't think they're going to allow for the kind of tactics that perhaps he used on Cunningham himself. I mean, is that a way to just try and pardon his own defeat? Maybe. But he thinks Usyk's team are going to say no to certain things. A ref will insist on more of a pure boxing contest, and that will give the Ukrainian the advantage. Now, the other voice of reason here, you could say one a little bit less of emotion, is Michael Hunter, who lost to Usyk, I think back in the cruiserweight days, has gone up to heavyweight himself, should have got a decision over Povetkin not that long ago, which I think was a draw, and is a guy who's used to being the smaller guy when, of course, pitted against other heavyweights. And he, interestingly, talks about the other side of the spectrum, that life can be difficult for the bigger man as he attempts to adjust to a smaller target. When you get to a certain size, you're not actually that easy to lean on anymore. You start to become awkward. Why did Charlie Goldman, the trainer of Rocky Marciano, insist for his only 5'9" guy to fight smaller? Why did he do that? He was trying to make The Rock as awkward as possible and to sort of almost draw the opponents onto him so they'd lurch over The Rock and then he'd come up and across with his huge haymakers, get you on his turf, and then start beating the living hell out of you. There are certain things about size that people don't understand anymore, that's been lost as we've divvied it up into too many weight divisions. Middleweights used to spar with heavyweights on the regular. That seems crazy now. Why did that happen? Well, back then, a lot of middleweights used to be a bit more rugged. They were used to that size differential, and it allowed the heavyweights to work on their speed. And yes, even in actual professional fights, middleweights used to fight heavyweights and even beat them. It was possible. And while you got some silly comments from people who were over-enamoured by what Fury did to a very incompetent Dillian Whyte, they forgot to focus on the basics. A 6'9" guy, and let's just say it, Fury isn't 6'9", is he? He's a bit shorter than that. Might be closer to 6'7". Well, his build, anyway, is not the ideal. He is quick for a very big man. That's the caveat. He doesn't move as well as Muhammad Ali. He's not as smooth. He has certain disadvantages now that gravity is exacting on his very large body, which if he fights the right kind of active guy, they could be taken advantage of. And the one thing I haven't mentioned that may go beyond the stylistic technical breakdowns is that you just know when these guys go head to head and they look at each other for the first time, there's not going to be a flicker of doubt in Usyk's eyes. When Fury was looking at Wilder, particularly in fights 2 and 3, I got the sense that Wilder was a little bit ruffled and his front was a bit of bravado. He didn't fully believe in his bones that he had the beating of this guy. Not after the fact he wasn't able to put him away in the first fight. He didn't have that solid foundation. He was trying to hold it all together. You know Usyk is not going to be like that. He's going to be thinking, hey, I think I know I can beat you. I'm unbeaten as well. I don't know what it's like to lose in the pro ranks. My country's at war. I don't give a shit. You were in trouble. But of course, I am just banging Usyk's drum a little bit. I am not so naive to discount what Fury brings. And no, I don't mean size so much as a natural instinct for the ring. Fury has shown in his career that he knows what to do when the moment calls for it. I can imagine him incorporating boxing and being rough in this fight, doing whatever's necessary to get the edge. He is a very quick thinker. He does a lot of feinting himself, something AJ pretty much did none of. If you could look at that rematch by AJ and pick one thing, people were saying be more aggressive, but there were very few feints. He wasn't setting up opportunities, always in a state of reaction. Fury is not like that. He is very instinctual. He will be setting his own traps, getting Usyk to bite on something, then going forward and getting physical, trying to make him unsettled. But the point I wanted to try and drill home in this video is that simply being big isn't really an attribute. That Tyson Fury isn't quite as big, statistically, as he is often listed. That guys like Michael Hunter know that being big can actually be used against you. And that guys like Dillian Whyte, Deontay Wilder, so unskilled, so plodding, so easy to take advantage of in clinches. That's not going to be Usyk, who's going to plan so meticulously for this fight, who knows that there's going to be a big guy trying to maul him.